took like a lot from our hotel last night.
Okay, I took none, so
Okay.
you're way ahead of me.
I hate like when you have to go down in the morning and take paper and
Yeah,
like, looking
thank
at
you so much.
like, what are you doing? Like, you used to bring the long paper with you, and I have like a limited supply because it's the last like
Fair.
bits that I've ever had of it. Like,
Yeah, no, long paper's clutch.
I don't like long paper. It's great because it means that you can flow all of your framework arguments and then the two contention arguments on a single page.
I don't do that.
Well, you don't read enough of the framework for that issue. Shots. Yeah. I mean, that's West Coast debate. That's not a bad thing. That's just how that goes.
Yeah.
Is it though?
Oh, actually, start. Sorry. Mute that. Y'all can keep talking about it.
Short West Coast free running man. I'm terrified of Dave Preston. I don't ever want to see that man during this tournament. Because if you see him, it means that you're late. You don't want that to happen.
Or just bumped into him in the hallway. But
Or that too. But I was out to like Crumbrooks though for having all of their debaters just swarm rooms whenever they're
it's
like
excessive, yeah.
half a second late, like, hey, have you started the round yet?
even early sometimes. Okay. Yeah, I'm good.
You good? Contention 1 is civilian casualties. 1. In response to civilian casualties, the world is reducing military aid to the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen. U.S. aid is vital to the war effort. 1123 calls for restrictions have been going, particularly from Europe. Trump pointed to the U.S.'s lucrative arms of the Saudis' reason to stand by the Kingdom. Denmark, Finland, and Malaysia countries suspend use after journey database of Saudi imports to the U.S. medical supply exports to Germany. The U.S. supply the U.K. have the value despite the decrease in the value set weapons imports actually increased by 30% almost entirely because of a huge uptick. Interest from the United States, no country inclusive the United States in major weapons supplies. The U.S. accounts for 61% major arms supplies, Saudi Russian supplies, so those not including the organization's database. 2. Support of the coalition has resulted in the deaths of over 50,000 people from U.S. supplied weapons and 85,000 children from related famine and disease outbreaks. COVID-19 since the Saudis began bombing Yemen, more than 50,000 people have died from U.S. supplied weapons, 40 million on the bank of starvation, 85,000 children have already died from hunger, disease, the third population need humanitarian aid use. The equipment is among the hands of unaccountable malicious activities. There's this coalition of participants and weapons to ACAT. These weapons include not just guns, but 18 missiles, armored vehicles, seeking lasers that alternative Houthis, reversing use weapons and passing technology to one of the UAE's reckless arming militias. The answer is being the U.S. must immediately and ultimately support the Saudi coalition in Yemen and anti-arms systems. The Saudis and the UAE. 3. The war in Yemen is the worst humanitarian crisis on the planet. It's a war of attrition responsible for the deaths of thousands of civilians. 1419 with the U.S. and with aid in the custody of the U.S. from the UAE for salvage, have salvaged in a impoverished country resulting in the worst humanitarian crisis on the planet. These fears and the efforts of fighting war attrition. The UAE have power militias that with Tesla the country trying to carve out Yemen is used almost right doing daily trains which means that carving the Yemen also militias studying waving the UAE are fighting war with more fertile brother. The war will continue to kill tens of thousands of Yemeni civilians. Plan the United States should end military to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Contention 2 is solvency. 1. The plan forces KSA to unilaterally end the war, prompting a negotiated settlement. Development in 1126. Growth is seeking to pursue the coalition restraining from air safety. It will take too long. There's no time for bringing the military to hold the negotiations hostage. Unreasonable ways that studies and anxious call for peace with the war. Actually, these others are restraining spending. There's no military pressure clearly on the Saudi Air Force. $6 stabilization that is only going to make smooth unless the U.S. determines that we continue the war will come to the cost. 2. The plan sends a signal to allies that U.S. forces must be earned, encouraging moderation. This stabilizes the region. Oil prices reduces terrorism and proliferation. World and 18 years not to do much to maintain regional balance. Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Washington, more balance relation. All states of Iran include this more equitable approach to will facilitate cooperation with U.S. and Iranian interests alliances such as Afghanistan. The prospect of relations with Iran and send no moderation. This approach will also discourage Americans. President Alice from taking U.S. war, granting access to U.S. war, encourages us to be rock states Saudi Arabia speaking in Yemen, having been offered small source of life balance power parts of South Korea, Washington, and Colonel Alice means using this power to maintain the balance along the power to seek for access to oil tanks for need use these and give these less reason to fund streams to lower prices. 3. Military is an outdated model, doesn't give the U.S. influence or leverage. Washington Schmidt told 25 million President, not just the Yemen official will be treated by Saudi assurances that the campaign will be over in weeks. American silence is bagging the military commander attacking the sea to calling interviewing Saudi pilots with a high altitude avoid enemy fire coalition things that missed the drugs there. Pilots working with the wrong time the coalition continue to grow no trade with hospital schools and other places. The coalition officers were their own chiefing commands. American officials actually new ones to the river, but also make the old days tell American leaders and said they need help. They need to keep helping the coalition. 4. No feeling interoperability. Castro and Canada the University of Investigations equipment means the U.S. is sending a larger team taking the transition from U.S. aircraft to Russian or Chinese industry for tanks communication with equipment and other high-tech equipment in the cities to another time. Contention 3 is topicality. 1. U.S. statute defines the military to include provision of equipment Congress in 2007. Military defined the provision of weapons, vehicles, and training during military exercises. 2. Budget definitions of HW are directed. 8. Military is not a term of art. Broad conceptions are directed by scholarly gaps. 2B14 research does not capture the entire scope of the military sensitivity. Do not recognize the term military security since the terminologies these scholars and researchers have not considered DDs. Congress collections defense scope cooperation with operational and measure use military action scholars and defense aggregate that only entails bilateral military grants, military grants, and arms. B. The U.S. lies about the level of support for the coalition to hide involvement. Leaked documents prove terse 116 documents untrue lack of transparency around U.S. military war with the skill thousands of U.S. military than even more deeply involved in the war than previously indicated. Other makes things about the U.S. military to the contrary. C. There's no ground for sales versus A. Senate Dagger PhD casualties. And I see arms as the principle of commercial transport and privacy also invoking such an arms as the creation of death. The distinction between arms as the military is not clear cut. D. Arms as the bulk of aid McBride 10 and 118 military primarily used to helping use Alice purchase military equipment. E. Saudi doesn't pay. Nor is there evidence. The government tries to cover it up. Capaccio in 18 days, $3.5 billion discount, which has been completely reported to the British studies, claiming military loss value. Came to form 2 where study waivers the largest state the Gao Highland waivers meaning and without naming Saudi Arabia, all the waivers necessary and up in the initial last American from the well 57 waivers. Reject competing interpretations. They encourage the negative to shift the goalposts with arbitrary interpretations, causing substance ground of goes give Nike sufficient framing to evaluate the opposite. I guess they have no ground, not just ground that they want. Contention 4 is framing. 1. Rejecting 1% risk of extinction. Doctrine A doesn't just class ethical possible, making classes all possible, making mystical. It doesn't have 1% doctrine intellectual increase the global warming, the asteroid, with the terrorist and nuclear weapons, with the superior pandemic, risk issues that deserve our attention, not just the most scientific way. Treat them like mechanics of events about, but in only different we can get a reason those should be called motivated top shot, progression, visibility, neither able to act nor not act. 2. Uncertainty in the social contract, try the gums, use you good 95, efficiently trust unknown uncertainty, carbon to have much working information, to efficiently you know, actors will have most of the people still there, with enough to allow you to teach generals knowing everything, how you utility costs. 3. Intent focus, redefine structures of domination, McCloskey 12, and intent consequences, reinforcing brand intention, racial harm, powers, being able to having take harm to others, construction, being discord, and harm, be acceptable, this requires attention about the harmful and consequences, the measure promotes the scheme that, I think that this year power more harmful intents on others, discussion, they reject choice, unconscious consequences, and such being oppressed laws that have so effectively achieved the intention of being devastating unless it seems natural. I'm going to read some more cards. The status quo is reverse Goldilocks. Passing a resolution will get vetoed, triggers every Saudi backlash. They said and collapses U.S. leadership, emboldening aid recipients to ignore the U.S. Washington post editorial and 4-5 NDS sent an unmistakable signal with the trial of women where women starts activists and Pakistan Supreme Force around told their supporters including two U.S. citizens but only interpreted as bill of provocation. The Trump has time Congress objections have fallen on deaf ears. The response to like the practical punch and the support of Trump that other than interfering with the Trump as the measure is likely to have no practical effect. NBS has yet to suffer any tangible sanction that has emboldened the regime. Yemeni instability causes arm racing and miscalculation in the region, causes cascading conflicts among some continued violence after civil war for Yemen and the neighbors of risk grossly hiding ways of other for the circle of violence does not contain the spreading effects contagion of other neighboring states, even though our peace security between all our neighboring countries have increased their military expansion spatial cascade conflict, especially for promoting states and states not well engaged in the conflict of and military surrounding the private conflict. Yemen conflict is more likely to escalate than any other distance sport. 19. The conflict is reaching national international aspects and countries. The last thing that regional and international players is to integrate wherever Iran and Saudi Arabia, the two regional superpowers competing for regional surrounding Yemen is among the global research of the flames of hot war.
Alright. You good?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start on the solvency. This is talking about, I just want to clarify, this is about airstrikes, correct? Like, the airstrikes is the primary issue here?
Well, that's one of the main ways that the Saudis execute their war against the Houthis and Yemen civilians.
Okay. So is there any actual relevancy to the UAE in this plan other than to avoid key regimes?
Yes, there actually is. The cards that are in at the top of the advantage say that the UAE is funneling weapons to ACAP. They also, have, also commit the same amounts of, or not the same amounts, but a lot of civilian casualties and civilian deaths as well.
Okay.
I also sent out the other cards that are
Right. Let me actually show. Google wants me to say received. Thank you. All right. So, did you read a Perlith impact or something to this instability? Like,
No.
okay. So, where did you place the cards then?
At the very bottom.
All right, but I want to clarify then. So fiat would mean that the veto would not occur, or that we override the current veto.
No. It's that in the status quo, Trump is vetoing any sort of effort to end military aid to Yemen.
Yeah. So does fiat cause veto override or prevent veto?
I don't think that I have to specify the last thing.
I'm asking you to do so.
I'm not going to say.
Oh.
I don't think process that's another issue. But this card basically just says that in the status quo, what Trump
Yeah, I get it. I know what the card says. It's I wanted to know how. All right. Do you read any evidence for how Saudi will react to this? Like you say, solvency in terms of it forces a unilateral end, but that's just about airstrikes. Why is this why is grounding the Air Force the only key reaction point?
Well, there's a lot of landmines in Yemen, so MBS isn't sending his ground troops in there. They're literally recruiting young boys and then having them run through minefields minefield. So I don't really want to risk like the lives of their
Okay, yeah, so they're sending Yemeni boys. Why do they care about their planes at that point?
Exactly, because their planes allow them to engage in the war without risking their own lives. So and the plan ends all military aid to them as well. So like they just wouldn't have an army, so they'd have to negotiate.
All right, so they don't have an army. Now what?
They have to negotiate a peace deal in Yemen. They can't keep the war going.
How would they negotiate if they don't have any army to negotiate with?
Well, they would be like, Houthis, let's talk it out so that we can end this war. And the Houthis would be like, yeah, we don't want to get bombed anymore, and then negotiate.
Yeah, except now the Houthis have no reason to negotiate. All right, no problem. I'll send it out.
Do you want to add me to the?
Sure. It's 3 off in case. Can I use your spoon? I mean, I set up my stand, but it's like, I'm lazy.
What's the overall piece?
It's like solvency stuff. It'll be, yeah, it's mostly solvency. Oh, did I not? Sorry, I did not add you to the chat.
Oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it.
I'll forward it to you. Tell me when we're all good.
Yeah, I'm all good. You said 3 and then a case.
Yeah, and it's green highlighting, by the way, for the cards that are like green and yellow.
Okay.
Okay. The United States should pressure Saudi Arabia and the UAE by threatening to eliminate military aid unless and only unless they cease hostilities in Yemen, curtail or airstrikes. The President of the United States should publicly articulate the military defense building capacity, joint intelligence sharing programs, and condition on scaling back involvement in Yemen. The counterplan solves the U.S. as official effort, and the end result would codify U.S. security assurances and improve stability. What's 8? American-Arab cooperation must rest on a new foundation of partnership. The U.S. has major parts to play with the Arab interlocutors. The card is the American security umbrella, conditioning American relations with and assistance to Arab governments on their behavior seems wholly appropriate. The U.S. should focus on building political conditionality, bilateral assistance. Yemen Salah was shocked to hear his country cannot receive funds because of its corruption, but the realization prompted him to undertake reforms ongoing cooperation with training Arab officers, helps promote independence of military dialogue, build consensus among U.S. and Arab military officers. So the U.S. should anchor salient Arab cooperation with U.S. goals and international commitments, a new regional security regime that will address Iranian tensions, improve their ability to contribute to defense, and simultaneously codify their reliance on an American security umbrella. And build trade allows the U.S. to dictate the terms of their partnership, reducing aid without conditions causes lash out and aggression that complicates the regional security environment and turns the case. Blankenship and Miles 16. Gulf partners are increasingly willing to act on their own decided to escalate or going alone depends on the state's allies. This assertiveness could be a response to perceived U.S. disengagement. These moves could be a response to perceived U.S. unreliability. Allied self-help may relieve the American burden, but it can also undermine U.S. interests. Self-reliance enables allies to pursue an independent course and more equitable to bring sharing the less Washington gets to dictate the terms of the partnership. Saudi posture and resulting behavior counter to U.S. preference to Saudi prioritize watching Houthi rebels in Yemen over fighting IS. Behavior that inflames sanctions promises to deepen regional conflicts, not resolve them. Less dependence on Washington comes at a cost. In Solve's case, in officer solvency leverage is key and requires the presence of military aid to leverage in the first place. And next off, reducing military causes allied proliferant aggression, Groman, PhD 18. It would be wrong to believe that the U.S. involvement would bring more peace. The role of U.S. powers to reassure our friends and deter our enemies. If we were not there to reassure our friends, we would find it necessary to act in ways contrary to our interests. We don't want Germany, Japan, South Korea, and Saudi to become nuclear powers to protect themselves. When the U.S. withdraws, expect our allies to start taking out insurance policies and our adversaries to become more aggressive. Old hatreds alone do not make worse. An opportunity is also required. Withdrawal of the U.S. created that opportunity. And proliferation the NPT causes nuclear war and turns terrorism at 11. Saudi proliferation could accelerate throughout the region. Pakistan could sell operational weapons to military systems or provide the infrastructure, material, and technical support to provide weapons within a matter of years. Saudi nuclear weapons would increase incentive to other nations in the Middle East to pursue nuclear weapons. Each additional state weakens in non-proliferation regime interaction would be more prone to miscalculation and escalation than a bipolar competition. Multipolar system less stable. Emerging powers might not take steps necessary to avoid a nuclear exchange. Given the close proximity of states and very short flight times, nuclear powers might be compelled to launch on warning. Their governments might also delegate launch authority, hiding the possibility of miscalculation. Uncertainty would trigger a nuclear war. Governments might lose lose control of the weapons to attack or theft, and Saudi capabilities and naval motivation is key. Lewis 15. Saudi Arabia can build a bomb. Tech have been developed to put to civilian use and spread around the globe. The fact that most states don't build has to do with restraint and not being able to. Saudi Arabia is building a city for training nuclear scientists. Saudi would be hardly the least nerdy country to acquire a nuke. You don't need to be rich to build a bomb. The tools, materials, and components sound good enough to the 1970s are widely available now. Proliferator doesn't have to try to acquire the most modern centrifuges. Saudis are alarming a weapon. That means expanding security arrangements. Saudis will not have one, not because they don't, they can't have one, but because the United States have addressed regional security issues. And exchange comes first. One is risk analysis. The potential loss of all life is key to avert anything else. Anything else so prioritizes only momentary value. And 2 point is a question of reversibility. You cannot reverse extinction. You can continue to produce more life and reverse other harms in the status quo. And next off. Moral claims are founded upon the right to determine one's own activity. Violating this prevents us from having other moral philosophies. New hoster. A subject to my self-conscious without ascribing for efficacy and activities ultimately ground lies in himself or rational being perceives itself immediately only if they are not practically willing, essential characteristic, the forming of an end includes determination to act in the world only by saying of its free agency and independent world can a finite subject into its own self-determined character. And thus the capacity for freedom is conscious for an action given that's necessary for preferred consciousness since it's an instinct part of decision making. 2 warrants. Well then. The question why should be an agent has an incompatible presupposition. First, because the presupposes non-agent is a possible outcome. The question presupposes may answer in a way that eventually leads to non-agent. Second question, this question is itself a question of practical reason. Practical reason presupposes the agency of the person can contributism locates its normative in the very thing that makes normativity necessary. Ability to argue, introduce a problem how we ought to argue, act, which is the problem that norms is supposed to solve. Skip the Valentine card. Thus, the standard is consistency with libertarianism. 1. U.S. military does not originate with the state but private manufacturers and contractors. Miller and Sikorsky 18. The administration spends its annual price to appropriate billions for American salaries to finance their purchase of the U.S. military training equipment. The executive branch requires approval of arms sales for Cold War cash arms to maintain the defense industrial base. And 2. Banning military inhibits the whole military to authoritarian regimes. That's a form of restriction free economic choice of individuals, i.e. to set and pursue the ends of exchanging goods. Richmond 12. Market forces result in human action. Individuals select ends and act to achieve them by adopting suitable means. Individuals' economies to accomplish more. Market forces just acting rationally in the world. Also, they're going to cross-apply the McCluskey card. Don't buy this. 126 question. We value justice because it violates the human dignity of individual. It's a question of explanatory power. We are prereq to actually explain why injustice is a bad thing. And it's 2. It's impact justified. They don't actually justify why it matters. On case, first on framing real quick. On Mexico, one we can actually evaluate different extinction impacts first, i.e. we can determine how, based off probability, how we should interact with extinction impacts. And then on the McCluskey, on the Gooden card, 1, this is a nice fallacy, you should buy it. And 2 point is that the Constitution proves that we don't actually act, the government doesn't always act utilitarianly. And on to cards on case. Draft includes an absolute pullout, such as the plan would be bad in conditions goods. There's also no interlink between the plan of oil and terror. Blue highlighting is ours, well, 18. Instead of giving Saudi Arabia a blank check, playing a balanced power politics does not require Washington to abandon its allies completely. It means using U.S. power. And Russia fills in empirics proof, Borshevska 18. Russia's won't stop arms exports technology to the United States and Middle East has emerged Moscow's arms market. Moscow has made great strides since Putin came into power after major military reform. Arms sales are a major source of financial gain. Arms sales are also a foreign policy influence. Russia arms are well made on par with the U.S. and well suited for the region. These are more affordable than Western weaponry. Western arms come with a future and attached to a great choice. Moscow has inroads with Iran, Syria, Egypt, Morocco, and Turkey. Russia's influence is growing. And regimes are bare plural. There's no modifier that allows for specification negate. If the affirmative doesn't grammatically defend the resolution, there's no jurisdiction to vote otherwise. And skip the next with this argument card. The plan is a perfect storm. It made Saudi panic and caused existing tensions to escalate. No peace in Yemen, more war, more prolific. Tab R15. Precision nuclear will they run sharply from the U.S. and Persian Gulf Arab states. This deal could undermine the regional security misperception, can unintentionally push states into war. Threaten the area that the deal is a major victory for Iran and demonstrates from the U.S. The Saudis are acting more aggressive regionally. Cut the credit regionally. Additionally, do not buy their interoperability argument. This assumes that Saudi Arabia would have to stick with the weapons. They have no choice once you cut off aid.
Good?
Yeah.
Status of the counterplan?
Conditional.
Conditional, cool. Okay, so I guess, how do you verify, so the counterplan is conditions on them ending the war in Yemen?
It would be 1, reduction of involvement in Yemen, and 2, curtailing of restrictions.
Okay, so the first part of the counterplan says pressure unless they eliminate or cease hostilities in Yemen. The second part says condition on scaling back Saudi involvement in Yemen. I feel like those two are mutually exclusive.
That's not what I said just now. I said reduction in involvement in Yemen.
Okay, reduction. So it's reduction in involvement.
which would obviously involve then the same kind of negotiation of peace deals, etc.
Okay.
It's not just it's not just like oh, you pulled out one soldier, we're done here. Like,
Okay,
one,
how do you determine how much they need to pull out in order for them to get the aid?
yeah, so that's rather straightforward. Sorry, let me
It's not one truth.
let me put the counterpoint to this. Like, cease hostilities, Yemen.
Yeah, it's like very vague. It says conditional on scaling back Saudi involvement in Yemen. So like, does that mean that like doing less airstrikes would constitute scaling back involvement?
No, like,
Why not?
scaling back is a scale where you can scale all the way
Okay.
back, and that's what we're saying.
Okay.
It's the conditions of the
Cool.
path.
All right, this next card says Saudi Arabia would become, it says that allies would become more aggressive, and then you have like one line about Saudi Arabia. Where do they become more aggressive?
What card are you
The
referring?
one below the Blankenship and Miles card.
And sorry, what was the question?
So where does Saudi Arabia lash out?
Yeah, so Saudi Arabia has obviously reason to continue a proxy war in Yemen. This is not only a religious conflict between the Sunni and Shias, it is also a conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Okay.
They would be glad to lash out and fund, say, proxy terrorist
Yeah, where does this
organizations.
card even get close to saying that? It says that they've prioritized fighting the Houthis over ISIS. Where does this
Yeah, they would decide to escalate and go on its own, regardless of the allies.
Can you? I hate the can you point me to a line thing, but can you seriously point me to a line?
What do you want a line?
That says that Saudi would lash out
Yeah,
at anyone or become more aggressive anywhere.
yeah. So it's a question of the counter to U.S. preferences, right? Saudi Arabia has prioritized quashing Shiite or Houthi rebels in Yemen over fighting the Islamic State, and behavior that inflames tensions promises to deepen regional conflicts, not resolve them. The question of less dependence on Washington is in many ways exactly the point, but it comes at a cost, i.e. the fact that Saudi Arabia is more likely to do what it wants, which is fight the Houthis, than listen to the United States.
Okay, this libertarianism NC, if the U.S. uses taxpayer money to subsidize Saudi weapons, then why is that a violation of?
Yeah, so that might be worthwhile. Like, we probably should stop the subsidizing of arms sales. However, you did read a whole bunch of reasons why arms sales are still topical, and like military aid, right? But I would also say that like that's just a question of what we're actually selling. Like, right at the end of the day, like it still requires the United States to allow sales to it. Yeah, receipt.
case NC counterpoint dissent.
Alright. Okay, can you go get it?
Sorry about that.
Okay. Case NC counterpoint dissent.
Very good. Showcase, I'm guessing, starting with me.
I'm just gonna do a top 10 for the ones.
Okay.
Cool?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. 1% respect is evident in essential, which means that it realizes that action is not the is on policy or good evidence that it literally can't use content and this because there's a necessary trade-off and every action will violate the rights of some citizens. The world evidence doesn't flow negative. It says the counterpoint is a blank check because after the Yemen war it gives Saudi Arabia a military aid for which within it would involve them as well. There's no Russian film, their card doesn't say anything about Saudi Arabia and our interoperability card takes it out of the real argument that we need to call. This becomes an argument no jurisdiction judges but I'm not talking about absolute time. And what the next part is says that they will action against Iran, but the Iranians should already done that because Saudi Arabia perceived that be so aggressive and they consider our backlash is happening in the status quo because Congress passed a resolution which made enemies more aggressive. The last argument is that interoperability is happening because they assume that it's just that they have to stick with US weapons. They literally have to stick with US weapons. They're so ingrained in our sort of framework from the last 60 years that they must use US weapons. The Russian bombs won't fit. And their plans, the NC1, be suddenly being inescapable doesn't make it normal. The laws of physics are inescapable doesn't mean that an obligation become a physics teacher. Two governments is you to a social contract like official obligation to protect the constituents, not who say the personal body, even evaluating whether or not consequential lines is their role because it represents the just bring the social contract. B capitalism cause individual body never to account for mass because 17th century so no individual person was capable of it. Sees right of consequences when the states are small possibilities of the luxury see imperfect information possibilities of the necessary individual obligations to do so they have to aggregate only case with the need to affirm if intent focuses a Republican position of privilege we're able to discard the effects of our actions on others just with mass happenings only the intended for turn the plaintiffs hindering the NBC was had massive human rights violation even doing so 5 turn taxing people from a military violence their freedoms as well as taking not consensually 6 government can use absence actions they collect taxing the police force to function as society the goals for well being in society the framework is a part question the conditions come on one new solvency the only evidence about Saudi Arabia not the rest of the coalition do they all to agree some it's super vague still back involvement could also just mean less airstrikes so totally ending aid is key to permit to the counterpoint as long as they say to the counterpoint results in top action is in several street past efforts to the middle levers right at 18 Yemen these desires often exist can already use them unless the US agreed to coalition rather than leading this way operate the US and be for Trump and ship decision US for novel levers rather than as for affirmation decision the US not able to swing it's a order project selling advancing just point being informally investing training over the US to it seems to decline the loan project for the celebrity city about that strategy US for under the project of US power world like the previous multi that has supported city only conflict for condition not as evading issues to one makes impossible to read our best on the lowest threshold for argument interaction so it makes everything a new cost option instead of us and they release covered option has to be a reason to reject the team because otherwise a new cost just goes to offense 5 condition counterpoints are legitimate entirely playing inclusive another one taking pieces often seen pixel legitimate entirely playing inclusive counterpoints are not the artificial with the inflict with the bad disease working research incentives about also limits they can do nothing not in the planet apply immediacy and certainty this opens the floodgate to consult or any other country or any other accreditation on issue where reject the team damage already done the 1 year fit is so time part 6 counterpoints unenforceable it's a lie ban and 18 argument that was keeping out the collision because events is offering the most block ideas some becoming students the official myth and the pretend that one study attacks that continues to study aggression it was the cause of war for rid of the active religion this no critical trying to be no religion right on the right and it goes to the field last argument you can see that Yemen causes arms races withdraws and other powers to the young against application no new turn response it was dropped the pill they said one terrorist can still leaks Weiss and 15 nuclear weapons of multiple secrets that include towns and their cholesterol and search because the archives and legal some likely to extremely little toxins such as the public and years ago we see the civil army collaboration instead of the carbon base when there's what's called more toxins and about the toxins we see mirror and natural assets and technically protecting the world season snow season we're basically back with the army the well armless with Indian intervening study pro stuff war with 118 countries have been engaging in power against the LCD season quite more study never been advocacy the decision can be war kingdom G SG to you said we have to attend the wars only and the professional institute may be more likely engaging war in the worst of the such word a loss of war it's source of the law the Olympic wars they study reasonable over in the run have there be new power balance effect new returns to be issued by linking those strategic stability for that causes economic collapse China drawing Korean War cups and some study running wars leading increasing critical unmitigated disaster produces support over 20% of the world all of this study brings the treatment easily close shipping before a single ship is damaged if it ensures the sewer probably global sector would fall similarly China's separation media dependence has become acute the closure of her basically created a political crisis would influence to splitting gears in the region to run military strikes from one place as we can be as North Korea one could lead a rubber escalation in the Korean Peninsula I'll read one more card global prolife is inevitable big good in 1980 I'm actually one of my global prevent this with nuclear weapons I'll affect others the region new start as a sudden occasion from my maybe pursue massive flexibility if nuclear weapons at the false kid I will take custody that from the new turn such as the wrong side of your journey to reconsider the decisions
Can you sit down, Craig?
yeah
Alright, well, can I wait for it? Because that's going to be wrong. this under the proof section?
Yep.
Order will be, sorry. Order will be answering like condo bad and the plain inclusive, the conditions counterclaim bad. So it'll be CP flow, then just admin case. Okay. I'll send that.
So I ended up kind of framing stuff separate from the solvency page.
Framing will not really be an issue.
Not really. It's okay.
So this stuff at the top.
The counterclaim clearly solves case. Any reason why there is no leverage is a reason why the AC does not get solvency. The very same arguments apply. It's a question of how we actually leverage it in the first place, which is very good talking about how leverage only comes when we actually have military aid there in the first place, which means if we do a unilateral pullout, we have no more leverage and there's no reason for Saudi Arabia to actually listen to us, which means that there's no possible solvency for the AC to have. This was conceded. On Blankenship, they only cross-applied their Young card. Young assumes that the Yemeni conflict continues. However, we argue that one, we solve, but two, even if you just do a straight up pullout without any conditions, you prevent solvency and allow that Yemeni conflict to continue because it means that Saudi Arabia will have greater operational independence and will focus on fighting back the Houthis in Iran rather than doing anything else related to the United States and what the United States wants. They will not go to Yemen. These are solvency takeouts that were conceded. Don't allow new 2AR spins about solvency when they weren't in the 1AR. Now, let's go to first conduct. Counter-interpretation of the negative negative read one conditional counterclaim. Standards 1, neg flex. The negative has to we shouldn't do the plan conduct prevents the neg for the key strategic tool. Neg flex key to ensure the neg strat checking back and the house ability to choose every part of their advocacy and that one is unable to stress to check back against infinite half prep and unpredictable specification of their plan. And all arguments are conduct which terminally non-unique to interpretation counterclaims are offered between custody sets and competition is the link. If there's no competition, it goes away just like any other argument. And reciprocity. If I have to defend the CP unconditionally, they can have a 4-to-1 strategic advantage. They can read theoretical objections, perms, solvency added deficits in solvency terms, and their app has built-in answers to this quote. One condo is uniquely key in order to check back the fact that the app has prep against the status quo. And condos are reciprocal because I still have to unconditionally deny part of the plan, regardless of whether I do it through the side of the CP or the status quo. And every part they make is an infamy to be sure responsible because I need competition to access down plan time trade-off is in their favor since perms take seconds to make as opposed to the counterclaim. On to the plain inclusive one. First off, the argument off the debater here, one, because it's only a small portion of the NC structure, but two, because of the fact that it actually allows us to get back to the substance that's all debate, move plain more in depth. And also, it's not entirely plain inclusive, so don't buy their arguments here. One is a question about whether the Saudi Arabia actually needs the aid in the first place, but two is a question about whether or not conditions can be effective on their own, which is obviously an argument you're clearly having with me. Limits don't actually flow affirmative here. One point is that these floodgates are already open, so there's no way that you can actually vote off of these, but 2 point is that these limits aren't open anymore by conditions counterclaim. Conditions are really common on topic, and if you're not prepped out against a conditions counterclaim, you probably shouldn't win in the first place. Yeah, okay, and more on this. On the line, well, extend Walt 18. I'll answer his argument here about why Walt doesn't say like. Walt is specifically warranting why we do not want a blank check scenario, i.e. not having any conditions whatsoever and not acting on those conditions. The counterclaim uniquely solves these issues by forcing action onto the conditions in the first place. It's not a question of immediacy vis-a-vis their claim in their like reject conditions counterclaim. It's a question about placing these conditions, giving time for the pullout and the ceasefire, and then pulling out when those conditions are not met. Should that be the case? It forces action vis-a-vis wits, and it actually causes better solvency in the long run. Their Rand card is literally the issue that we're talking about. Rand talks about the leverage question. This is back on the counterclaim, directly. The Rand talks about the leverage question, which it does not actually solve for, which is a question about the fact that the United States is in support mode, which prevents it from having operational discretionary. That doesn't mean that we cannot still leverage our military aid as a total control. Otherwise, the AC does not solve it. You vote negative because on presumption, you vote negative on presumption because the AC sets the terms of the debate and sets the end terms of the debate, and they also read two theory shells, which is probably the reason that you shouldn't vote for them otherwise on presumption because they don't get solvency. On Bando, this legitimately agrees with the negative idea of the negative conditions counterclaim because it's merely arguing the fact that there haven't been blank checks in the past and we haven't acted on conditions, which is a change that the counterclaim actually advocates for in the first place. On to case. All right, only going for one argument here, which is the Borshevska card. The interoperability issue does not apply. It's a question of the fact that Saudi Arabia does not have any military facilities themselves. Even if they have U.S. planes in status quo, they must switch to Russia if they're going to have any chance whatsoever to continue protecting themselves against Iran. It means it's a prior question to actually having any solvency because of the fact that they will turn to Russia whether or not they want to or whether or not it's expensive because they have no other choice. On to Perlin. All right. Perlin causes spiraling arms race and collapses MPT breakouts or fast and short flight time issues that ensure conflict escalates and draws in the United States air. Nay, Perlin makes their impacts worse because it disrupts power balances to make accidents, miscalculating nuclear more likely. That's the element card that was completely conceived. Your analysis here is really lacking. It's on the Hardy card. The USA stops war with Iran. This is in the principle of mutually assured deterrence. There are a few issues here. One is a question of the fact that Saudi Arabia hosting weapons for Pakistan is a question for causing the Indo-Pak war card that you probably should have read here. But two is a question of the fact that the flight times are so short vis-a-vis Edelman that there's no way they could actually have mutually assured destruction because any risk of a radar blip is a reason that they would not want to actually do it in the first place. But then that means that no trigger of VCOM collapse. You say Bidgood Prolif is inevitable. One, this doesn't actually say Prolif is inevitable. It just means that there's some parts of the non-Prolif regime that are collapsing, not that it's actually going to disappear. But two, even if that's the case, Saudi Prolif is uniquely something that we should try and avoid in the long run, which only the negative can do. A risk of the descendants reason to vote for the negative extinction outweighs. This was conceded out of the NC. It's a question of risk analysis, which means it's part of question. It's not about the Weiss is about terrorism. Don't buy this argument. It literally isn't about case. U-Link, insofar as the full pullout means that they no longer have boots on the ground and fear U.S. protection is gone. Security of them.
Case, NC, counterpoint, dissent.
Sorry, say that again?
Case, NC, counterpoint, dissent.
Okay.
Plain self-legal war in Yemen results in tens of thousands or at least millions of lives saved. They've conceded that extinction first logic fails because there's always an infinitesimal risk of extinction which would paralyze action. Their argument in the 2 wasn't very good on the dissent page and didn't really make any sense, but if we solve 14 million lives, that's obviously a high enough impact and resolves all their sort of death bad claims because we also resolve death. I'll answer the sort of Russia failure argument. Their card, challenge flag, this Boris card doesn't mention Saudi Arabia anywhere in it. Even if it mentions other Middle Eastern countries, they have zero game on our interoperability evidence. Our evidence is from Gang Closer, who's a fact checker for the Washington Post, and he literally says that Saudi Arabia will not be able to switch to Russian weapons because they're already too locked into the U.S. infrastructure. Their bombs wouldn't fit into U.S. planes, which is what they already have, and the transition would take decades, which means that they wouldn't be able to ship. You should not buy Overing in 19 on this question. If we read qualified evidence that said that Saudi Arabia wouldn't be able to fill in, even if there's no sort of turn case or argument on this, and the airstrikes would end, at the very least, would take another few decades for them to be able to do it. The NC, they didn't extend the Utah argument. At the very least, should be the firm they considered 2 turns versus that we hinder hindrance because NBC or NBS is sort of violating human rights in Yemen, which is net worse, and the military takes taxpayer money because Saudi Arabia doesn't pay for the weapons. I know it's kind of cheesy, but you should like teach Andrew to keep that stuff better the next time, because just they didn't extend you to. So this is the framework. And even if you lose every other argument on the float, this is what you can hang your head on. And for that, because they didn't cover the counterclaim page, they have dropped no solvency. The counterclaim text is extremely vague. It says that we should condition on them ceasing hostilities there, but then the next line says that it should be curtailed. It should be conditioned on them scaling back hostilities. There's no mention of what that means in the conceded circumvention argument, because scaling back hostilities could essentially just be scaling back like a few airstrikes, and the U.S. already has an incentive to support Saudi Arabia. Because we sort of view them as such a vital ally. The counterclaim would get circumvented. They conceded our rand evidence that we have no leverage in the status quo if we try to keep military over there, because they just don't listen to us. Empirical, when we're like, don't hit a hospital, they just continue to hit hospitals, and we did nothing about it, which means that there's no follow through for the counterclaim. It doesn't apply to the F, which means that you shouldn't very make our presumption, because we just cut off all weapons. There's no way that they can abuse that system. Last argument I'll give first, the bandit evidence is completely unenforceable, because the US doesn't even like pretend to monitor what the Saudi Arabians do. So especially publicly, which means that there's no way that the counterclaim would actually be enforced. And they're very light on the solvency question. On the last speech, there's no last shot argument. They've not isolated a theater or a scenario in which Saudi Arabia would lash it, which they shouldn't give it to them. And their evidence is also like they have zero solvency evidence about the Yemen war, or say yes evidence that Saudi Arabia would comply to end the war in Yemen, which like means that their counterclaim doesn't solve anything, and that the case outweighs the dissent. At the top, proliferation, social war with Iran is key to conventional parity. They consider already evidence. Their answer to Mad was just not very good. Saudi Arabia and Iran wouldn't go to a nuclear war because they both know how to end it and end in a thermonuclear destruction. However, conventional wars are more likely to have a result in miscalculation, which strips their only 2 in our framing argument, because neither party knows how war would end, would likely escalate the conflict that causes Korean drawn as well as China, because it would attack oil streams, and that war would happen only in the status quo if they don't have nuclear weapons, but wouldn't happen if they did. Also, Poland is inevitable. They can see that Trump is withdrawn from every single Cold War era treaty like INF and the New START Treaty, which causes pull from Germany, Japan, and Saudi Arabia, and Iran, which are all countries that collapse the NPT, so they don't have an impact. And our case definitely outweighs. And if they should Saudi Arabia, and the card says Saudi Arabia.